Acts 14:24-28, the open door of faith. Passing through Pisidia, they came into Pamphylia. After speaking the word in Perga, they went down to Attalia. From there, they sailed back to Antioch, the place from which they had been commended to the grace of God for the work they had now completed. When they arrived and gathered the assembly together, they reported all that God had done with them and how he had opened a door of faith to the nations. And they stayed there a long time with the disciples. The journey described here closes a significant movement of the gospel among the nations. The path winds through regions once dominated by covenantal boundaries, territories long considered outside the Commonwealth of Israel. Yet now, the message moves freely, unhindered, crossing lines that once stood firm under the former order. They return to Antioch, not merely as travelers finishing a trip, but as witnesses to a completed work. The language is deliberate, the work they had fulfilled. This was not an unfinished mission awaiting future completion, but a defined task brought to its intended end. What had been entrusted to them by the grace of God had reached its appointed goal. When they gather the assembly, the emphasis is not on human effort, but on divine action, all that God had done with them. The expansion of the message to the nations is presented as God's accomplishment from beginning to end. The messengers were participants, but the work itself belonged to God. Central to their report is this declaration: He had opened a door of faith to the nations. This phrase marks a decisive shift. The door is not gradually unlocked through human qualification, nor is it held open by adherence to former covenantal distinctions. It is opened by God himself. The imagery of a door suggests access, entry into something previously restricted. Under the prior arrangement, access was mediated through the covenant given at Sinai, with its ordinances and distinctions. The nations stood at a distance, described as strangers and outsiders. But here, that barrier is removed, not by reforming the old structure, but by establishing something entirely new. Faith is presented not as a condition to achieve acceptance, but as the means through which the already accomplished work is received. The door is opened first. The believing response enters into what has already been made available. The initiative rests entirely with God. This moment stands within a larger transition that was unfolding in that generation. The message of the risen Christ was not simply offering an addition to the existing covenantal system, its fulfillment, and with it, the arrival of a new reality. The inclusion of the nations apart from the law was not an afterthought. It was the unveiling of what had been promised from the beginning. The completion of this journey mirrors the nearing completion of that transitional age. As the message spreads and takes root among the nations, the old distinctions, once central, are shown to be passing away. The gathering of Jew and Gentile into one body, without the mediation of the former system, reveals that a new covenantal order has been fully established. Their extended stay with the disciples reflects a period of rest and confirmation. The work, though expansive in its reach, is spoken of as fulfilled in its purpose. What remains is not the striving to complete redemption, but the proclamation of what has already been accomplished. Thus, the focus rests on grace from beginning to end. They were commended to the grace of God. They fulfilled the work given by that grace, and they reported how God, by that same grace, opened the door of faith to the nations. The narrative closes not with uncertainty, but with settled confidence. God has done it. The door stands open. The nations have been brought near, and what was once promised has now been realized.